President taking his second foreign trip as commander-in-chief this week. He will visit Poland before traveling to the G20 summit in Germany on Friday, where he's expected to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Joining me now is former Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs under President George W. Bush, Nicholas Burns. Good to see you. How important is this meeting?
Oh, it's very important. You know, the U.S.-Russia relationship is one of the most important we have. Russia's probably our most dangerous adversary. They've never met, so they've got to establish an agenda and a way of talking to each other. President Trump has a major challenge. His policy towards Russia has not been strong in two respects. Number one, he has been ambivalent about the sanctions on Ukraine that every other Western leader supports. So I think that President Trump needs to tell Putin the sanctions, the economic sanctions on Ukraine will stay until Putin gets out of eastern Ukraine and Crimea. And secondly, on the issue of Russian interference in our election, our intelligence community is united. The Senate voted 97-2 to impose new sanctions on Russia. That was a Republican-led initiative, and President Trump has been soft on that. He's not really clearly answered whether he'll support those sanctions. He's got to do it, because unless he shows some strength with Putin, Putin's going to conclude that President Trump is a fairly weak president on Russia, and we don't want that. Certainly Putin to think that about the American president.
I do want to get to this because President Trump did just tweet, and here's what he had to say. We'll be speaking with Germany and France this morning. And this is after, of course, he spoke with the leaders of Japan and China last night about the North Korea situation. Heather, I want to get your take on what the Undersecretary Burns was just talking about, about Trump not being tough enough with Putin and on Russia in terms of the Ukraine sanctions and the sanctions that were voted here in the U.S.
I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Trump's entire MO is to do a dance where he's tough and then he comes back, and he's tough and then he's nice. It's very calculated. I mean, this is one of the things that was in the election that you could see. He's not emotionally driven when the claim is that this is all thin skin. But if you're a thin-skinned person, you can't pivot as quickly as he pivots between being attacking and being nice and gracious and conciliatory. And I think that what we're seeing here with Putin is a big dance. We need Russia on some things. We're annoyed with them about others, and he is feeling his way to strong men sort of figuring out, you know, they both have a lot of the same affect. And they're feeling each other out. So,
can we talk a little bit about Syria? I'd like to hear the ambassador's views on.
Well, I was going to point out, if you're going to talk about President Trump and this administration looking or behaving in a weak manner on Russia, the fact that we struck that Syrian air base is the very opposite of that in terms of Russia and Iran.
And that's what I'm wondering is whether there's any room for agreement or collaboration with Putin on the Syria problem.
Nicholas?
I would say probably not. I supported President Trump's airstrike on the Syrian base 6 weeks ago, but the Russians are aligned with Iran and Hezbollah, and right now they're trying to win a major victory that doesn't really leave a lot of room for the United States to cooperate. But let me just say on the question of whether President Trump has been tough enough, we know that Putin launched a cyber attack on our elections. We know he tried to get into 21 states' databases on voters. We know the Senate Republicans want to sanction Russia over that, and President Trump hasn't agreed. I testified before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence just 3 days ago, Wednesday, and the Republicans and Democrats are united saying that the United States needs to be tougher on Russia and show the Russians they can't interfere in our elections. I don't understand the argument that somehow this is some kind of a dance. Look at the facts. The president hasn't been tough enough on Ukraine or on the Russian interference, and I think that's got people Nicholas, on the Republican side concerned.
I think that the Democrats also have a very big problem in terms of the lack of action last year by the Obama administration, because if you look at a timeline of the cyber attacks, the DNC wouldn't turn over its server to the FBI, who was trying to investigate it. The Department of Homeland Security issued a statement in August that they were trying to hack the state voter registration systems. President Obama got in Putin's face in September, there's a lot of pressure on both sides at this point for the lack of action last year and then whatever inaction you're talking about this year.